The moment my mother's laughter echoed through the living room, I knew she was targeting me again, but I never expected that sentence. In front of every relative, she pointed at me with a proud, mocking smile and said, "Tell us, daughter, how does it feel to be useless?" The room froze. My heart didn't. Something inside me snapped. Quietly, dangerously. For years, I let her insults shape me. For years, I carried burdens she never admitted. But that night, I finally broke my silence. And the truth I revealed didn't just shut her up. It shattered the entire family. Stay with us. This amazing story will leave you speechless. Before we get started, hit like, share, and subscribe, and drop your location in the comments. The last Sunday of every month was supposed to be peaceful. At least, that's what everyone in my family claimed whenever they forced these bonding gatherings onto the calendar. I never looked forward to them. Not because I disliked seeing my relatives, but because these gatherings always seemed to become a stage for my mother's theatrics. This month, however, felt especially heavy. I sensed it the moment I stepped through the front door of my parents' house and saw the carefully arranged dishes on the dining table, the spotless floors, and the strained smiles. Mom had gone all out, and that usually meant she was preparing herself to perform. My aunts and uncles were already there, lounging on the couch with plates of snacks. My cousins were bunched together in the living room, scrolling through their phones. Even my older brother and sister, who rarely bothered to show up, had made an appearance. Everyone seemed strangely alert, like they were waiting for something, though none of them could have predicted what would unfold later. I placed the dessert I'd brought onto the counter, and Mom instantly appeared beside me, smoothing her apron as if she'd been waiting for that moment. "You didn't have to bring anything," she said sharply, loud enough for nearby relatives to hear. "You should save your money." The jab was unnecessary, but typical. I smiled politely, refusing to rise to the bait. Years of practice had taught me not to. As the evening went on, conversations flowed around me like a river I didn't belong to. My family talked about promotions, vacations, new cars, and their children's achievements. Mom floated from group to group, gasping dramatically, emphasizing her own sacrifices, praising my siblings' successes as if she had sculpted their lives with her bare hands. When people asked about me, she answered before I could speak. "She's just figuring things out," she would say with a pitying sigh. But beneath those smiles, I felt something else lurking in the air, something colder, sharper. A build-up. Pressure. A storm waiting for the right moment to break. And little did I know, I was standing at the center of it. Because before that night ended, my mother was going to humiliate me in front of everyone. And I was going to shatter her entire facade with one sentence. Growing up, I learned early that my mother's voice could cut deeper than any knife. She didn't yell. Yelling would have meant losing control. No, she preferred quiet humiliation, the kind that slipped beneath your skin and stayed there for years. I remember being 8 years old, proudly showing her a drawing I'd spent hours on. She looked at it, forced a smile, and said, "Your sister was much better at your age." I didn't know what comparison meant back then, but the way my heart sank taught me quickly. As I grew older, the comments became sharper, more calculated. Whenever relatives visited, she used me as her favorite example of what not to be. If I didn't get the highest grade, she'd sigh dramatically and say, "Some kids are gifted, and some aren't." If I tried something new, music, art, sports, she dismissed it as a phase I'd fail at anyway. My siblings got encouragement and praise. I got reminders of how easily disappointed she was in me. By the time I was a teenager, I had stopped expecting kindness from her. She had perfected the art of public embarrassment. At birthdays, weddings, festivals, anywhere there were ears to hear, she'd drop subtle jabs wrapped in laughter. "This one," she'd say, pointing at me with a proud motherly expression that fooled everyone. "She's still trying to figure out her life." Or, "She's sensitive. Always has been. Gets emotional over nothing." My mother's friends nodded sympathetically, unaware that she was the reason I cried behind closed doors. To them, she was the strong, hardworking woman with the children who adored her. But behind that polished mask was a woman who built her self-worth by picking apart her own daughter's confidence piece by piece. Yet despite all the pain, I never fought back. Not once. I stayed quiet, swallowing my anger and hurt year after year. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have predicted, was that her habit of tearing me down would one day give me a strength she never expected. Every insult had built a fire inside me, and at that family gathering, she was about to learn what happens when the quiet child stops staying quiet. Dinner that evening felt unusually long, as if time itself had slowed down to watch what was coming. Everyone gathered around the large wooden dining table. One my parents had owned for years, worn at the edges but polished as if it were a symbol of our family's unity. The aroma of roasted chicken, garlic bread, and my mom's famous biryani filled the air. People laughed, clinked glasses, and shared stories from work. On the surface, everything looked warm and peaceful. But beneath that perfect picture, I felt the familiar tension rising, like a pot about to boil over. I quietly ate my food, listening more than speaking, as I always did during these gatherings. My siblings talked about their promotions and vacations, and the relatives showered them with praise. Mom hovered near them with a proud glow, chiming in with anecdotes designed to highlight their achievements even more. Whenever the conversation drifted toward me, she would subtly redirect it, pretending not to notice but ensuring nobody asked too much. I tried to ignore it, tried to stay calm, reminding myself that I had survived far worse moments. But tonight felt different. There was a spark in her eyes, a sharpness. As if she was waiting for the right stage, the right audience, the right moment to unleash something she had rehearsed. At one point during dinner, I caught her watching me. Not with love or concern, but with calculation. A smile, smug and anticipatory, curved at the corner of her lips. I didn't know why, but an uneasy feeling tightened in my chest. My instincts warned me that something ugly was coming, something she had prepared for. After dinner, we all moved to the living room. The mood lightened as people settled into couches. Laughter echoed, children played, and the adults exchanged gossip. I sat quietly with a cup of tea, wishing the night would end soon. Then Mom walked into the center of the room, hands on her hips, face lit with theatrical excitement. My stomach dropped. I recognized that stance. It was the pose she used when she wanted attention, and she was about to use it against me. Mom cleared her throat loudly, twice, just to make sure everyone in the living room was paying attention. Conversations faded, laughter quieted, and dozens of eyes shifted toward her. She basked in it, smiling like an actress walking onto a stage she believed she owned. My heart thudded in my chest. I gripped my cup of tea a little tighter, bracing myself without even knowing why. "So," she began dramatically, placing a hand on her hip, "we were just talking about everyone's achievements." She gestured proudly toward my brother and sister. "New jobs, promotions, travel plans. I'm such a lucky mother." The room filled with polite applause. Then she turned to me, slowly, almost savoring the moment. "And then there's my youngest." The way she said it made my stomach twist. Her voice sweetened, but poison dripped from every word. "Tell us, dear, how does it feel to be so useless?" Silence crashed over the room. My aunt gasped softly. One cousin tried to hide a smirk. Another whispered, "Oh my God." My brother stared at his phone, pretending he hadn't heard anything. And my sister stiffened, eyes darting toward me, unsure whether to step in or stay silent as usual. Dad blinked in confusion. "What are you talking about?" he muttered, but Mom ignored him completely. She laughed, a loud, mocking laugh that cut through the quiet like a knife. "Come on. Don't look at me like that. It's just a joke." She nudged an uncle. "You know how she is, always sensitive. No job, no direction, just floating." Her words sliced deeper than she knew. Heat rose in my face, but not from embarrassment. Not this time. It was something else, something steadier, colder. The years of silent endurance, swallowed insults, and forced smiles were stacking inside me like bricks in a wall. And suddenly, that wall cracked open. Mom leaned forward, eyes wide with fake innocence. "Well, say something. How does it feel?" The entire room waited, for my reaction, for tears, for another moment they could pretend to feel sorry for me. But I didn't break. I didn't cry. I didn't run. Instead, I placed my teacup on the table with a calmness that felt almost unreal, and prepared to say something that would rip apart her perfect little performance, and expose the truth she never expected me to speak out loud. For a moment, everything around me blurred. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, a deep humming that drowned out the whispers and the shifting bodies around the room. I wasn't shocked by her words, not anymore. What stunned me was how numb I felt. After years of being her emotional punching bag, her insults no longer stung the way they used to. Instead, they settled into a cold, familiar place inside me, a place I had grown too comfortable with. My eyes dropped to my hands resting in my lap. They were steady, strangely steady. I expected them to tremble, expected my throat to tighten the same way it always did when she attacked me in front of others. But this time, nothing. No fear. No panic. Just a rising clarity, as if someone had wiped the fog from a mirror I'd been staring into my entire life. I inhaled slowly, the kind of breath you take before making a decision that changes something in you forever. The humiliation she wanted me to feel simply wasn't arriving. Instead, something completely different took its place, something I hadn't felt in years: strength. A quiet, unshakable strength that came not from anger, but from exhaustion. I was tired of surviving her. Tired of shrinking so she could feel bigger. I lifted my head. She was still standing in the center of the room, hands on her hips, smirking like she had won. Like she had finally delivered the knockout blow she'd been preparing for years. Her eyes glistened with satisfaction, certain she had pushed me into silence once again. But when she saw my expression, calm, almost peaceful, her smirk faltered. Because this time, I wasn't breaking. This time, I wasn't swallowing the pain. This time, I wasn't the weak daughter she thought she had under control. I met her gaze steadily, and something inside me clicked, the realization that if I didn't speak now, I would spend the rest of my life being treated the same way. And so, with a steady breath and a voice unlike the one she was used to hearing from me, I finally prepared to answer her. I straightened my back, feeling the weight of every eye in the room settle on me. Mom stood confidently, expecting me to crumble or stammer, her favorite endings to these humiliations. She didn't know she had finally reached the limit. I looked at her calmly, then at the relatives waiting like spectators at a show they never paid for. My voice, when I spoke, didn't shake. It didn't hesitate. It didn't apologize. It feels great, I said evenly, since I just stopped paying your rent. The reaction was instant. A sharp gasp cut through the room. An uncle choked on his drink. My sister's eyes widened. My brother finally looked up from his phone, stunned. The air turned heavy, thick, almost tangible. For the first time in years, my mother's face drained of color. She blinked rapidly, like someone had slapped her with something far heavier than words. Dad froze. Rent, he repeated, his voice slow and confused. What rent? Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked caught, cornered in a moment she had never prepared for. She had expected me to quietly absorb everything like always. The idea that I might fight back had clearly never crossed her mind. You don't need to act surprised, I continued. I've been paying it for 2 years. Every month. Quietly. Even when you mocked me, even when you belittled my work, even when you told people I was useless. Whispers erupted among the relatives. Some stared at me with disbelief, others stared at my mother with judgment sharp enough to cut through the air. My mother finally snapped out of her shock. Why would you say something like that here? She hissed, her voice cracking under the weight of panic. You're making things up. I leaned back slightly, my calmness slicing deeper than any scream could have. Am I? Should I show everyone the bank transfers? The receipts? The messages you sent me begging for help so Dad wouldn't find out? Her lips trembled. Her hands shook. The mighty woman who mocked me just minutes ago was suddenly small, fragile, exposed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her back. I simply told the truth. And for the first time in my life, the truth was louder than she ever was. Dad's confusion filled the room like a thick fog. He pushed himself up from the couch, his brows furrowed so deeply they almost touched. What rent? He repeated, louder this time, his voice trembling, not from anger yet, but from the fear of what he was about to discover. I turned toward him gently. Dad, the house hasn't been fully paid off for years. Mom told me you lost your job temporarily 2 years ago and didn't want the family to know. She said you were stressed and embarrassed, and she begged me not to tell you I was helping. The room went silent. The kind of silence that hurts. Dad shook his head slowly, disbelief spreading across his face. I never said any of that, he whispered. I never lost my job. I never asked her to hide anything. Gasps spread through the room like ripples in water. Mom stepped back, panic clawing at her features. That's not true, she stammered, pointing at me. She misunderstood. She always misunderstands. No, I said quietly, shaking my head. I didn't misunderstand anything. I unlocked my phone and scrolled through the screenshots I had kept, not out of fear, but because I had needed proof to remind myself I wasn't crazy. You texted me every month.
You cried on the phone. You said the bank was threatening you.
You said Dad couldn't handle any more stress. You said I was the only one who could save the family. I held the screen up. Relatives leaned forward, squinting, whispering. Mom's messages glowed like a confession. Mom, please transfer it today.
Don't tell your father.
He'll break. Mom, I'm begging you. We'll lose the house. Mom, just this once, please. Dad took my phone with a shaking hand and read each message. Slowly, carefully, with the kind of heartbreak only betrayal can form. When he looked up, his eyes were wet, not with tears, but with fury he struggled to contain. You lied to her, he said to Mom in a low, terrifying voice. You lied to me, and you let our daughter pay our rent for 2 years while you told everyone she was useless. Mom swallowed hard, sweat forming on her forehead. I had no choice.
She was doing nothing with her life anyway.
At least this made her useful. The room erupted, not with noise, but with disbelief. And for the first time ever, every relative who once looked down on me now looked at my mother with disgust. Her secret was no longer a secret. And it was only the beginning. Dad stared at Mom as if he was seeing a stranger, someone wearing his wife's face but none of her truth. His hands trembled as he gripped my phone, the glow of the messages reflecting off his shocked, widened eyes.
Why? He whispered, almost to himself.
Why would you do this? Mom opened her mouth but only a pathetic, broken sound came out, half word, half excuse. I was trying to protect you. Protect me. Dad's voice rose, cracking like a whip through the room. Everyone jumped. Even the kids in the next room went quiet. Protect me from what? From the truth?
From my own daughter? Or were you protecting your image? Your pride?
Your lies. Mom flinched back, her shoulders curling inward. You don't understand.
No, he snapped.
I understand perfectly now. He pointed at me, his voice shaking with emotion.
She has been helping us. She has been saving us. And you let her do it while you mocked her?
Insulted her? Called her useless. Mom grabbed the edge of the table, desperate.
I only said those things as a joke.
I didn't mean. Dad cut her off again, slamming the phone onto the table so hard everyone gasped. This was not a joke. This was manipulation. You let our daughter carry a burden she never should have carried. For 2 years. My mother's face twisted in panic as relatives exchanged horrified looks.
Some covered their mouths. Others shook their heads. Whispered curses.
Judgment had turned sharply toward her, and for once, she felt the weight of it. Dad stepped closer, lowering his voice but making it even more terrifying.
Do you know what hurts the most? Not the money. Not the lies.
It's the fact that you let me believe my own daughter was struggling, while she was holding all of us together. Mom's eyes filled with tears, but for the first time, no one rushed to comfort her.
Not even her sisters. Not even her favorite children.
Dad turned to me, his voice softening. You should have told me.
I tried, I whispered. But she always stopped me. Dad closed his eyes, pained.
And when he opened them again, something in him had changed forever. Dad sank back into his chair, rubbing his forehead as though trying to process a nightmare he had somehow slept through. My mother shifted from foot to foot, eyes darting around the room in search of sympathy, support, anything. But even the relatives she depended on for validation looked away. They weren't going to save her.
Not this time. I knew this moment was coming. I had prepared for it.
Slowly, I opened the folder I had tucked inside my bag, the one I carried not out of revenge, but out of necessity. I placed it on the table with a quiet thud. Mom's eyes widened instantly. What is that? She snapped, panic sharpening her voice. Proof, I said simply. Inside the folder were bank statements, overdue notices, screenshots, and credit alerts, not mine, but hers. The financial mess she had been hiding from the whole family. The truth she worked so hard to bury.
I pulled out one paper and slid it across to Dad. Here.
This is the loan she took out in her name, and then defaulted on. Dad read it, and his face hardened.
Another sheet.
These are the credit card bills she maxed out.
Gasps filled the room. Another.
This is the jewelry she bought on EMI, the ones she told everyone were gifts from you. Dad's jaw clenched so tightly his teeth almost cracked. The relatives leaned in closer, like spectators at a building collapse, horrified, but unable to look away.
My mother's breathing turned shallow. "Stop it," she whispered.
"You're embarrassing me."
"No," I replied, locking eyes with her. "You embarrassed yourself. You used me to cover your spending. You used Dad's trust to hide your debts.
You used this entire family's respect like a shield while you dug a hole deeper every year."
Dad looked up sharply. "Is this true?"
"You told me the savings were fine. You told me our bills were paid."
Mom's voice broke. I just wanted us to look successful.
Everyone else's wives had nice things.
Good clothes. Expensive handbags.
I didn't want to look less. So you lied? Dad asked. For appearances? For status? Her voice cracked under the weight of her own decisions. I didn't know what else to do. I inhaled slowly, steadying myself. You could have asked for help. Instead, you hid everything and dumped it on me.
The room was silent again.
But this silence wasn't confusion or shock anymore.
It was judgment. And my mother felt every ounce of it.
The room felt like it was holding its breath, tight, tense, on the edge of something explosive. Then, as if a switch flipped, the relatives finally reacted. Voices rose all at once, overlapping like a chaotic storm. Some were demanding answers, others whispering, others outright shocked. My mother stood frozen in the middle, trembling, unable to reclaim the control she had always wielded so easily. My aunt, the one who always worshipped my mother, stepped forward first. "Is this true?" she asked in disbelief, her eyes flicking between the documents and my mother's guilty face. "You made your own daughter pay your debts." Mom's lips quivered. She wanted to help. "No." My sister suddenly cut in, her voice louder than I'd ever heard it.
She begged her. "I saw the messages once. I asked about them."
Mom said it was just temporary. She looked at me with guilt flickering in her eyes.
"I should have said something. I'm sorry." That shocked everyone. My sister never contradicted Mom. Ever.
Then my brother stood up slowly, arms crossed, gaze sharp. "I always wondered why you treated her differently," he said to Mom. "Why you praised us and treated her like a burden."
He shook his head. "Now I understand.
You needed her more than you needed us." Mom's face fell apart, fear, shame, fury mixing together. Another cousin chimed in, whispering loudly enough for the whole room. "And she called you useless?
After everything you did?
That's messed up." Dad took a step forward, raising his hand for silence, but the family wouldn't stop. Everyone had something to say, some defending me, some attacking Mom, some simply stunned at the double life she'd been living. For the first time in my entire life, I wasn't invisible in that room. I wasn't the quiet one. I wasn't the disappointment. People were seeing the truth, not because I shouted, but because her lies had finally collapsed under their own weight.
And my mother,
the woman who once controlled every narrative, was now trapped in the center of a storm she created with her own hands. As the room buzzed with accusations and disbelief, I felt something shift inside me. For years, I had carried everything silently, because speaking up never seemed to matter. But now, with everyone listening, with the truth exposed, I finally felt the courage to let the words I had swallowed for years rise to the surface. I stepped forward, my voice steady but soft. "Do you want to know how it really felt?" The room quieted instantly. Even Mom froze. "I wasn't useless," I continued. "I was exhausted." My throat tightened, but I didn't stop. I worked 2 jobs for almost a year. I walked home late at night because I couldn't afford transportation. I skipped meals to make sure I had enough to pay what she asked for. Gasps rippled across the room. I looked around, meeting the eyes of everyone who had ever judged me without knowing the truth. Do you know how many nights I cried before sleeping? How many mornings I woke up terrified of getting another message from her saying, "We need more money"? How many times I wanted to tell someone but couldn't because she convinced me that I would be the reason this family fell apart. My mother flinched as if each word struck her. "I wasn't floating through life," I said firmly. "I was drowning." But I kept going because I thought, maybe if I helped enough, maybe if I tried hard enough, she would look at me the way she looked at my brother and sister. With pride. With love. A few relatives wiped their eyes. Even Dad's breathing grew uneven. "But she never did," I whispered. "Instead, she called me lazy, dramatic, sensitive, and tonight, useless."
I swallowed and let the final truth settle.
But the truth is, the only reason this family didn't fall apart sooner was because of the daughter she thought was worthless.
My mother's face crumpled. My father looked shattered.
And every relative in that room finally understood what I had endured all these years.
Not because I was weak, but because I cared far more than anyone ever realized.
My mother's breathing grew uneven, her eyes darting desperately from face to face, searching for even one ally.
But the room had shifted.
The sympathy she expected, the sympathy she always received, was gone. Still, she attempted one final performance, forcing a trembling smile and clasping her hands dramatically against her chest. "Everyone, please, don't listen to her," she said, voice cracking.
"She's twisting everything. You all know how emotional she gets. She exaggerates. She always has."
She turned to me, pointing as if scolding a child. "Tell them you're overreacting. You always do."
But no one nodded. No one agreed.
No one stepped forward to rescue her. Instead, a thick silence followed her plea, heavy with disbelief. Dad crossed his arms, eyes cold.
"Stop lying," he said quietly. "This isn't one of your dramas. This is our life. Our family. And you've been playing us all."
Mom's face fell. "You think I wanted this?" she snapped, desperation creeping into her voice. "I was alone. You were busy, the kids were grown, and she thrust a finger toward me, she was the only one I could depend on."
"She wasn't your support," Dad corrected.
"She was your victim."
That single sentence hit the room like thunder. Mom's mouth opened, then closed again. She tried to step toward my aunt for support, but my aunt gently stepped back.
She turned to my siblings, neither moved. She looked utterly lost, like someone realizing too late that the ground beneath them had already collapsed. Her eyes finally landed on me, filled with a mixture of fear and resentment. "After everything I did for this family, you all turn against me."
Dad shook his head.
"No one turned against you. You exposed yourself." And with those words, Mom's last thread of control snapped completely, leaving her standing alone in the ruins of her own lies. Dad stood there for a long moment, shoulders rising and falling with slow, controlled breaths, the kind he only took when he was fighting to hold himself together. Everyone watched him, waiting, nervous, unsure which way the storm would move next. My mother looked the most terrified of all, because for the first time in their marriage, he wasn't looking at her with love or patience.
He was looking at her with betrayal. Finally, he turned to me.
His expression softened just a fraction.
"I'm sorry," he said quietly, voice trembling.
"I'm so sorry you carried this alone." His words cracked something inside me, not from pain, but from relief I had been craving for years. Before I could respond, he faced Mom again. "You hid everything from me," he said, his voice firm now.
"You controlled our finances. You lied to my face.
You let our daughter bear a responsibility that we should have shared."
He shook his head, exhausted. "I trusted you. I believed you."
Mom's lips trembled. "I didn't want you to worry."
"No," Dad cut in sharply.
"You didn't want to stop spending." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his keys. "From this moment on, you're no longer handling any money. I want full access to every account, every bill, every loan. And tomorrow, we're going to the bank to sort this out." Mom stared at him, stunned. You're taking my cards."
"Yes," he said firmly. "And every document. Every password. Every account number."
Gasps filled the room. My mother swayed, as if the ground beneath her had vanished. "And another thing," Dad added, looking around the room for a moment before focusing squarely on her. "You will apologize to her.
Truly.
Not for show.
Not to save face.
But because you owe her the apology of a lifetime." Mom shook her head, stepping back. I didn't mean to hurt her."
"You did hurt her," Dad snapped.
"And you enjoyed it."
The truth landed like a hammer.
Mom swallowed hard, her eyes filling with tears, not the dramatic ones she used to manipulate people, but the real ones that came only when a person realizes they've lost the power they clung to their entire life. Dad exhaled deeply, as if making a decision that had been years overdue. "Things will not go back to the way they were," he said finally. "Not anymore." The world around me felt strangely quiet after my father's declaration, as if everything that had been loud, chaotic, and suffocating moments ago was now settling into a heavy, breathless stillness. My mother stood motionless, stunned into silence. My father looked drained, older, almost, as though years of truths had finally crashed into him all at once. And my relatives, they didn't quite know where to look. Some stared at the floor, others at me, but no one dared say a word. For the first time in years, I felt the weight on my chest ease, just slightly. I had spoken. They had listened. And the truth, once buried, was now standing in the center of the room with nowhere left to hide. I looked at my mother one last time. She didn't speak, didn't apologize, didn't reach for me. She simply stared, her pride shattered, her control gone, her excuses exhausted. And I realized something painfully clear. I had spent most of my life trying to win love from someone who only saw me as useful when I was convenient. I took a breath and said softly, "I think I need some time away from all of this." My voice didn't waver. It didn't seek permission. It was simply the truth I had been too afraid to claim. Dad nodded immediately. "You deserve peace," he said. "You've given more to this family than anyone ever realized." My mother opened her mouth as if to argue, but no words came out. Maybe she knew there was nothing left she could say. Maybe she knew that the bridge she kept burning had finally collapsed for good. I grabbed my bag from the side table. The same bag I brought to every family gathering, filled with snacks and small gifts I always hoped would bring warmth. But now, it felt like a symbol of everything I had carried alone. I slung it over my shoulder and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I felt light. Free. Untethered. I wasn't running away from my family. I was finally walking toward myself. 3 months passed. Quiet months. Healing months. I rented a small apartment on the other side of town, started therapy, and focused on rebuilding a life that wasn't shaped by guilt or obligation. For the first time in years, I woke up without dread. I cooked for myself. I worked without pressure. I felt human again. Some days were painful, some lonely, but each day I grew steadier. Stronger. Dad called often. He never pushed me to come home, only asked how I was and reminded me he loved me. My siblings visited sometimes too, each carrying their own apologies, slowly stitching pieces of our relationship back together. But Mom, she never reached out. Not once. And honestly, I didn't expect her to. So when she showed up outside my apartment door one evening, clutching her handbag and trembling, I froze. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair was messy, her eyes swollen, her voice a fragile whisper. "Can we talk?" I hesitated. Instinct told me to protect myself. But I stepped aside anyway, allowing her in, not because she deserved it, but because I deserved closure. She sat on the edge of my sofa like a scolded child. "Your father took full control of the finances," she said. I have nothing. No cards. No savings. Your siblings won't help me either." Her voice cracked. "I didn't realize how much I depended on you." I inhaled slowly. "Mom, I'm not your safety net anymore." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know. I wanted to say I'm sorry." Her apology was clumsy, incomplete, and colored by desperation. But it was the closest to genuine I had ever heard from her. Before I could respond, the front door opened. Dad stepped inside. His eyes softened when he saw me, then instantly sharpened at the sight of her. "She's not here to fix your life," he said firmly, stepping between us. "She's here to heal her own." Mom lowered her head, finally understanding. Dad turned to me, voice gentle. "You don't owe us anything, not anymore." And for the first time in my life, I believed him. I had spent years trying to earn love. Now, I finally understood I deserved it all along.